How about I not put a title on my live videos? I'm just talking about the tropics, and I'm talking about the genocide perpetrated upon the Americas. Nothing to worry about here. Smallpox has been around since ancient times, and it was even a factor in the 1500s when Cortez defeated the Emperor Montezuma. It wiped out more than 90% of the population around Mexico City, from what I'm reading. Then, of course, in 1763, we have a letter from Sir Geoffrey Amherst. And Sir Geoffrey Amherst was involved in the Pontiac Rebellion. Chief Pontiac was attacking whatever fort they were at. Basically, the British saw that particular tribe and Indians in general as vermin. They admitted to giving blankets to the Indians who were surrounding their fort as a form of germ warfare. Some have tried to dispute this, but I just read the letters that he wrote, and it's pretty clear. There was an outbreak among the British soldiers, and they gave the blankets to that particular Indian tribe that was surrounding the fort as germ warfare. Smallpox had been around since ancient times. It had moved through Europe through the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages, and due to sanitation, very poor sanitation and contaminated food, it continued to be a huge problem through the 17 and 1800s. And by 1796 or so, we have Dr. Edward Jenner. Dr. Edward Jenner was a country doctor in Britain. He heard milkmaids talking about how they had cowpox from the cows, and they had never gotten smallpox. He decided he was going to inoculate a 10-year-old boy with substance from a pustule from a milkmaid's hand that was cowpox. Now, there were other doctors of the time, because we had medical journals. The Lancet was in use. Other doctors said that they knew plenty of people who had gotten smallpox after having naturally had cowpox. But nevertheless, this one experiment with one 10-year-old who, after inoculation, was deliberately exposed by Jenner to smallpox, a person who had smallpox. That person was just lying around or whatever. I mean, that's how prevalent it could be. And the child did not then get smallpox. Now, before Edward Jenner, there was something called varicellation, and varicella is the actual name. Varicella major and varicella minor are the names of smallpox. Even when smallpox is of the really bad, deadly variety, varicella major, it's still called smallpox. Kind of like calling a really large person tiny. And they used to actually take the disease itself. It was basically where people would take, they would scratch a pustule of smallpox, and then they would scratch it onto another person, or they would do arm to arm. And basically, the idea was, yeah, it's a risk, but at least in a controlled environment, you can make sure that this person actually does contract smallpox, hopefully a mild form, and then they're immune for life. Now that everyone agrees on. Once they had it, they were immune for life. People look at that as progress or, science, but it's funny how nowadays when parents want to make their children immune for life from chickenpox, that's considered criminal. And, with reason. But the difference between varicellation and this new, what came to be called vaccination, is that he used cowpox to then make a vaccine that inoculates people to smallpox. And that way it was less risky, right? And that, my friends, is where the word vaccine comes from. Vaca, or cow, in Spanish and Latin. I think in French it's vache. But in any case, when you say that word, you are referring to a cow. There's a lot more information out there, but I'm just skipping over stuff. And so, yes, the first vaccination was smallpox vaccination. And it, to this day, involves either cow, pig, sheep, or goat, like a serum that they make from a disease that is of the same family as varicella major and varicella minor. So now we have the presence of 4 vials of smallpox in a Merck lab that has now been announced to the public. We know that Bill Gates said he has warned that there might be the risk of smallpox making a resurgence. Wow, how does he know that? It's crazy. But it's good that we're prepared, that we do all these drills that are almost like clairvoyant, are seeing into the future. So now I want to talk about the very last recorded case of smallpox on this planet. August 1978 in Birmingham, England. A woman named Janet Clark. She was a photographer at the University of Birmingham's lab where they were studying the smallpox virus. It's a very sad case, actually. When they did an inquest after, there was some idea that maybe she had gotten it because her darkroom was on the floor above the lab where the head of research was working with the virus, and they thought maybe it was through poor ventilation, but then somebody debunked that later, and we're still not really sure, of course, about any of it because it was debunked and we're just not sure, right? It took her a little while to be diagnosed, but what they did is they immediately quarantined 500 people or something that were her contacts, and including her husband, her mother, and her father. And she had been vaccinated in 1966, but that was 12 years earlier. When they found out that she had it, they immediately vaccinated her mother and her father. Her mother, even after being vaccinated, contracted smallpox. It was a mild case, and she recovered in a few days. Her father died of a heart attack right after visiting her in the hospital. Then, when she died, the hospital workers were so scared they put her in a body bag and just left her in some garage for the undertaker to come get. After she died, the lead scientist on that smallpox study that they were conducting at the University of Birmingham, he went, and I had heard he shot himself in his garage at home, and then I just read that he slit his own throat while under quarantine in his garden house at home. And then I heard that he was so desperate to get his research done that he kept doing it even though the World Health Organization had told him that the lab was not adequate to be a vehicle for this type of research. There are warnings in our metaverse, online or in libraries. There are warnings about improper lab practices and lab leaks. They're few and far between. You really have to dig for them. So basically, the last case of what they call wild smallpox was in 1977 in Africa. And for those who don't know, smallpox is a skin disease that presents as very painful sores all over the body, and that there is a mild form and a very severe form. And it brings up the idea of eradicating something. Can you eradicate something from the earth? And when we grow up and as children we are told that smallpox no longer exists, is that really fair to say when, come to find out, it's actually in our country in a laboratory in Pennsylvania? Because it came out in the headlines. It wasn't just one local news report. What I often teach and what I often tell people when I'm studying and critiquing modern journalism is that things that are supposedly a myth, according to conventional wisdom, if there are any news reports about it, it's usually a local news report, and then it goes no further. It gets debunked, or there emerges a cloud of uncertainty around that news report. I was just telling the story of the last known smallpox death in the world, which was in Birmingham, England in 1978. It was actually the result came from the lab. The inquest, everyone who studied it afterwards agreed that it came from the lab. And chief scientist actually killed himself after that and said he was sorry he let everybody down. Another thing I found, now this could have been a sympathetic article, it seemed a little biased, but they said that the media caused this scientist to be suicidal. Information on eradicating a disease, a virus. Is it possible to... Smallpox no longer exists. Is that true? Or maybe we qualify it, and then in our memories, thinking back, we just know that it doesn't exist in the wild. I just wanted to give a little bit about the history of smallpox. Hopefully I have elucidated some things for you, but I'm sure there are more questions than answers at this point, which is what any good journalist should do. I try every day, and I really appreciate your support of Back to Fact. As you know, I am Tatiana Prophet, an award-winning journalist, and I wish you all a lovely day. Okay, bye.